straight to the Lord.
Thank you. Be seated, please.
We are spending time on Sunday evening looking at spiritual warfare, and we were not able to finish the lesson last week. I didn't want to rush over what we needed to say about Job, but I want to go back and read the two verses that give us the topic matter. 1 Peter 5 verse 8, be of sober spirit, be on alert. Your adversary, the devil, prowls about like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. And Revelation 9:11, they have as king over them the angel of the abyss. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, destruction. And in the Greek, he has the name Apollon, destroyer. Revelation 9 verse 11. And we're looking at the topic, Satan is the destroyer. And we spent time in Job. Satan thinks that if we lose blessings, we'll forsake God. He thinks if we become sick, our bodies are struck in some form, that we will reject God. And James 5 told us that Satan's desire was to make him impatient with God. And that's the tactic that Satan uses as he seeks to attack the body. There's a number of points that make an obvious point, and I want to use only a few of the examples. When God needed an ark built, he used the skill of Noah and his family. He needed a body. He needed a person. When he wanted the tabernacle built, he used the hands and the minds of Bezalel and Ohio and helpers. Exodus 36. When Jesus needed the gospel proclaimed, he needed the body, the hands of the disciple. It's an obvious point. He needs us physically to work on his behalf. And so when something happens to take us out of commission, Satan has won a temporary victory. And if we stay out of commission, if we become impatient with God in the midst of those physical difficulties in our life, then we are out of commission, if you will. And that's why we must think differently, we must be healthy, we must strive to keep our health, and we must strive constantly to be working on his behalf. But there's other words that are used in Scripture. 2 Corinthians 4 verse 7, for example. But we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the surpassing greatness of the power may be of God and not from ourselves. We are something special to God. And if you attach a statement to what we just heard, we are God's treasury. We have that vessel, that value that we present to him. And certainly he uses us. I read the verse I'm about to read to you, 1 Corinthians 9, verse 22, for a number of years as an athlete in high school. But I buffet my body and make it my slave, lest possibly after I had preached to others, I myself should be disqualified. Satan wants us to be sure that we're testing ourselves, that we're preparing ourselves, and we're a testing ground, if you will, to be ready to do what he needs us to do. I made the foolish statement a number of years ago, one Saturday afternoon, when Cassius Clay was coming into the sports scene, later to become Muhammad Ali. and we were watching him dance and dance and dance in a ring, and I made a statement, that doesn't look that hard. And my dad said, stand up, Gary. He gave me a command, and I stood up, and he said, dance. Do what he did. And after about 3 minutes, I was tired. And it was not 10 rounds for 3 minutes when someone's pounding your body. And so I grew in great appreciation for him and the training that would enable him to do that. And Paul says we need to buffet our bodies. We are a testing ground, and we need to be ready to serve the King. Physically, we have an accountability to him. I want us to turn to Luke 22. I don't have many answers to say or answer questions that would come up based on what Jesus shares with us. He is encouraging them to be willing servants. And a dispute, verse 24, had come up as far as which of the 12 was the greatest. And he instructs them that we serve differently than the Gentiles. The statement of verse 25, and they lord it over people. And they use the terminologies, not something we would use, but we know what he's talking about. They use the term, we are benefactors. We're lording it over others. And he says, that's not the way you are to serve. First will be last, last will be first. Verse 29, and I confer on you a kingdom, just as my Father confers one on me, so that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom and sit on thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Speaking of things to have to come about in spiritual realms. But then he says something. He had renamed Simon to be Peter, signifying a rock. But he reverts back to his previous name. He says, Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you as wheat. And that would scare me to death. Satan has asked for you. He takes us back to that heavenly scene. Have you considered my servant Job? And he makes a statement about the value of Job to him and his integrity. And it happens twice, and he maintains his integrity. Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you as wheat. What would have happened if Simon could have taken Peter out? Where would the kingdom be? How differently would Acts 2 through Acts 9 be? If in sifting Simon, the human, and he was not the spiritual rock that Jesus professed him to one day become. He wants to sift you as wheat. He wants to show what's real. He wants to show you what he can do. And there's other ways to maybe understand what we're being told. Verse 32 is profound. But I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. He didn't say, I'm going to keep Satan away from you. He didn't say some of the things maybe we would have wanted him to say. It was a warning to Simon of what was to come. And he offered prayers that he would not fail when that sifting took place. And when you have turned back Strengthen your brothers. What did Peter do? Not that long after this took place, being forewarned, he denied his Lord 3 times. And he wept bitterly. And we know that Christ was prayerful over him. What are you going to do when you are sifted by Satan? How are you going to react when that occurs? And what value can you be of me if you don't come back when you have a failure in your life? I need you to strengthen the brethren. And we know that Peter did. We know that he became that rock. We know that he stood before the Sanhedrin in those early chapters in the book of Acts after preaching that first gospel sermon and having the great response that he had, and the others also preaching on that day. And he had the confidence and the courage to stand up before the Sanhedrin when told, you quit saying those things, quit speaking that way. And they would warn him, they would threaten him, and on some occasions they would be beaten. And he did not fail his Lord throughout all of his spiritual walk. Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you as wheat. And I'm praying for you. Don't fail. But when you have turned back, he told him there will be a time. Strengthen your brothers. When that has happened, you have work to do. Strengthen your brothers. It's foreboding for us to imagine what that would have meant. Maybe we have an idea. When things happen to us, blessings lost, health diminishing, how courageous are we and how useful are we to the cause of Christ? Are we getting close to being what Satan suggested in Job 1 and Job 2 from last week? That just let those things occur and he'll curse you to your face. He'll leave you. He'll depart from you. And Job did not. He did not. And there's another section. By the way, I'm going to give back a few of the minutes I've taken from us from time to time. When I say what I need to say, I'm going to sit down. But I want us to turn to 2 Corinthians 12, verse 7. More to say from last week, but not the need to repeat anything. And I desperately try not to do more than necessary. Paul puts something before us that is a lesson for us. We're thankful those things are not occurring in our day. What if they were? What would you say and do? But they're not. And he says in verse 6, 2 Corinthians 12, even if I should choose to boast, I would not be a fool because I would be speaking the truth. But I refrain so that no one would think more of me than is warranted by what I do or say. And then he lays it out there. To keep me from becoming conceited because of these surpassingly great revelations. He told us in verse 3b that whether in the body or apart from the body, I do not know, but God knows, I was caught up to paradise. And he was taught by Christ for those 3 years. Not sure where I was, not sure the condition physically or spiritually that I was in, but I was taught by Christ. But to keep me from becoming conceited, the word that we use growing up is we get a big head. We think too highly of ourselves. He gave me a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. Books have been written and presentations have been offered suggesting that we could figure out what that thorn in the flesh was. We don't know with certainty, but we know on one or two occasions Paul would describe how he would be transcribing letters to be sent to churches, and Tacitus was there transcribing. I think that's the pronunciation of the man. And he would transcribe those letters. And so some suggest that maybe he was losing eyesight and needed that done. We don't know if that's the case. We know it was something physical, and he associated with being from Satan. It was a message from Satan. But he thought in his transcending or understanding what was happening, he saw the good that would come from it. It helped me to become conceited, but I saw it as something from Satan. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. And we can only imagine what that may have sounded like. Why is this happening? What did I do wrong? This is hampering the work I need to do for you. And all the other things that would have been truthful. He saw it as accomplishing something to keep me from being conceited, but I see it as something from Satan. And I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." And here's my interpretation of what I think that means. I've given you, Paul, what you need. Quit complaining. And I've given you what you need, and it reveals my power rather than you maybe becoming conceited, maybe acting without this as being a physical encumbrance, to depend more on yourself instead of me. But my power is made perfect in this weakness. And we know there are times where that can be true in our life. If we had all the answers, and we had all the strength of character, and we had all the mental agilities that we would want, we would not be as dependent upon God as we should be. If we acknowledge that we're lacking in something and are depending on Him, He gets the glory, He gets the credit. And while it may appear that it's a weakness on our part, in that weakness, His power is manifested. And that's the point. His power is shown. And I like to segue lessons. Where is the power? Where is the dunamis? It's in the gospel. It's in the gospel. Share the gospel message. Get out of the way of the gospel message so He will be glorified, not us. But the next verses aren't as easy to explain, if indeed I've begun to explain that one. Therefore, he came up with a summation. I pleaded that God would remove this physical encumbrance. He told me, my grace is sufficient, you have what you need. And in that process, my power is being manifested. In that weakness, my power is being manifested, not yours. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly, it's not an accident in his terminology, about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. he was not glad in his pleading to remove this thorn in the flesh, a physical difficulty. And pleading, now he's glad in his understanding. And his attitude is exactly what it ought to be. The power is in God. It's in Christ. The glory is in what Christ accomplishes. My power is made perfect, the better rendering is mature, because in my weakness, he is revealed the way he should be revealed. And I love his attitude. This is our attitude. And that is why, for Christ's sake, let's go back. I'm not pleading that he remove this thorn in the flesh. I'm not repeating it at all, over and over, up to maybe 3 times. For Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses. And let's repeat it, because this is what he's saying. And for Christ's sake, I delight in insults. And for Christ's sake, I delight in hardships. And for Christ's sake, I delight in persecutions. And for Christ's sake, I delight in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. When I have to admit that I can't go on and I depend upon God, I'm not weak, I'm then strong. Why? Because I'm depending on God. If I could handle this, I would be weak. Without God, we are weak. And so Satan, wanting to strike our bodies, causes us to be impatient, maybe on occasion pleading for something to be different physically, could be spiritually. We have a similar response to the one Peter and now Paul would give. Whatever has happened is forcing me, my word, it causes me to admit something and to depend upon God. And then in that circumstance, I'm not weak, I'm not lacking, I'm not less than I could be in my message. It's still effective because I'm dependent upon God. And that's why I say, and it's a strong statement, but I think it's a biblical statement. Whatever happens in my life, whatever it might be, whatever the list, the hardship, the insult, the weakness, the persecution, the difficulty, whatever it is, if it forces me to depend more upon God, it's a good thing because of the result of depending upon God. How would we relate it? Maybe he has to knock us down, our conceit, Paul is suggesting, knock us down metaphorically, thinking, well, you think you're doing all this? Well, I'll just show you. Satan is willing to do these things, and God lets them occur, his sovereignty, letting something naturally occur. And it forces us to admit something that maybe we would not have admitted beforehand. I know I go back to this, but it's a principle that he showed us when the children of Israel were about to enter into the promised land. You're about to eat from trees you did not plant and drink from wells you did not dig, and you're about to enjoy benefits that you had nothing to do with, my words. And be careful lest when you go in, you forget me. When things are the best that they can be, look at me. Look what I have. Look what I've accomplished. Look what I am. And sometimes we need to be shown that it's not about me. And sometimes Satan, as the destroyer, is allowed to reign in this world as the prince of darkness and to affect us in ways that we could turn from God in our impatience. My grace is sufficient. When you fail, strengthen your brothers, he said to Paul and to Peter. I once made the statement, and Terry chastised me, and she probably should have. I said, bring it on. Bring it on. These messages should give us some confidence that Satan may be sifting me as wheat. He may be causing things that would be a test for me. And because I depend upon God, I hope that I have the confidence to say, bring it on, I'm going to be faithful. But she said, be careful what you ask for. And probably it's correct. It's a valid warning. But if it occurs, we know how we should respond. We know the strength that God gives us in being his person in spite of those things. And Paul's list is pretty profound. Takes us back to Romans 8. What will you allow to occur that will cause you to be unfaithful? And the admonition there is that long list, and none of those will be allowed to cause me to be unfaithful because God is for me. And I have the overwhelming victory through Christ to bring two lessons together. Make up your mind that you're not going to be impatient with God when things occur in your life. Satan loves it. Don't become impatient with God as difficulties occur in our life. Let him be our strength. Let him be the cause of our next step as we seek to serve him. If we can help you in any way, with prayers, with other instruction, I encourage you to make it known as we stand, but it could be made known at another time. Just let us know how we can be of help as we stand and sing.
Rightly beams our Father's mercy from his light house evermore. But to us he gives the keeping of the lights along the shore. Let the Lord of our lights be burning, send a gleam across the way. Some poor fainting, struggling seaman, you may rescue, you may save. Dark the night of sin has settled, loud the angry billows roar. Eager eyes are watching, longing for the light along the shore. Let the Lord lights be burning, send a gleam across the way. Some poor fainting, struggling seaman, you may rescue, you may save. Trim your feet, oh that my brother, some poor sailor, tempest tossed, trying now to make the harbor in the darkness may be lost. Let the Lord lights be burning, send a greeting across the way. Some poor